Hello, I'm Mercedes Stephenson, and this is the West Block, politics, perspectives, and players. The government unveiled its election year budget last week with about $4.2 billion in new spending and another significant deficit. The budget promises money to help students with their debt, millennials with their first homes, and cash for skills training. But will these programs help Canadians? I sat down with Finance Minister Bill Morneau the day after the budget. Here's that conversation. Joining me now is Finance Minister Bill Morneau. Welcome to the show, Minister.
Thanks for having me.
Big day for you. You brought the budget down yesterday. And in the budget, one of the big things you promised is the first-time home buyers incentive. Now, it's aimed to help, you said, people in Toronto and Vancouver in particular, where it can be so expensive to buy a home. But the RBC chief economist, Robert Hogue, said that the action addresses the demand side of things, but not the supply. And as a result, quote from him, it's likely to raise prices, and that will erase any kind of benefit. So why are you doing this?
I think that what you have to do in looking at what we've done in around the housing market is to consider all of the measures. So first of all, we've been on this for a few years. We've made some really important measures to ensure that we have affordable housing across the country, a national housing strategy, which is about increasing supply. We've also, of course, put in measures including the stress tests that have actually dealt with stabilizing the market. So this year we did a number of things, and first and foremost we did focus on supply. We put in place $10 billion of investment financing for rental construction financing. That's an important supply measure. We put in place a $300 million fund for municipalities to apply to tell us how they can increase supply. So these are big and important measures. But the measure that we're talking about for first-time home buyers, what we're doing is we're looking at those people that just can't quite get into the market. So it's for people that have $120,000 or less in annual income. It's a program that is intended to allow them to have a shared equity mortgage with the CMHC, with the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation, meaning that they can actually move some of that mortgage to the CMHC, reduce their monthly mortgage payments, and get into the housing market sooner. In terms of its impact on demand, we've modeled it out, and based on the constraints we've put, we don't see an impact on demand, a very, very modest one. What we do see is that this can potentially take our current first-time homebuyer market, which has about 100,000 buyers, to maybe 120, 130, or 140,000 families getting into a first-time home. So a big impact for those families, but not an impact on demand, and especially not when you consider all the other measures we're doing to enhance supply.
Why do you think it's in Canadian taxpayers' financial interest to help Canadians buy a first-time home instead of allowing them to rent?
We want to do both. We've obviously increased the ability for rental housing to be constructed, and that's really important. What we're doing here is we're saying that there's a vehicle that we look at that can actually be an appropriate vehicle for people to get a shared equity mortgage. These kind of shared equity mortgages actually exist in the private sector already. What we're able to do is do it so that it'll be on a larger scale, it'll help people with that optimism. And from the standpoint of the overall economy, a lot of what you've seen in our budget this week is we're talking about, we've already made significant investments that have helped middle-class Canadians to feel more optimistic. We've made improvements in their situation with the Canada Child Benefit. People are in a better economic situation right now, especially in terms of jobs. But we're trying to create that optimism for the future. We all know that confidence is required for people to be able to be going out and doing the things they need to do to get more successful. That's what we're trying to encourage with these sort of measures, and we think it'll be better for our overall economy, as well as obviously better for the families that take the advantage of this.
Well, certainly an incentive for some voters, especially some millennials, but one thing that wasn't in the budget in heavy doses was Canadian industry and Canadian business. And the Canadian Chamber of Commerce came out and said that the budget, quote, failed to address the fundamental issues that continue to undermine the ability of Canadian business to create more jobs and generate more prosperity. Why wasn't competitiveness and taxation more of a priority in this budget?
Well, I don't actually agree with what you just said, and I don't agree with that statement.
The Canadian Chamber of Commerce statement?
Yeah, I don't agree with them at all, because what you'll see if you look into our budget, there's a whole host of things that we've done that we think are really important. What I've been hearing from business executives from the last few years is getting the kind of talent they need is critically important. So we made permanent the global talent stream, the ability for businesses to bring talent from other parts of the world to make businesses successful here. We obviously put in place what governments have been looking at, how around the world, how we can actually ensure people are prepared for the future of work. We put in place the Canada Training Benefit. Businesses have been asking us to think about how we can better train employees. It was an important ask from the Business Council of Canada. We put in place an ability for people to get up to 4 weeks of training every 4 years, and the kind of tax credit that gives them $1,000 to put towards training courses. This will help us to be prepared for the future, really important for business. But then we've done some specific things as well. We made the SHRED program, the Research Development Program for businesses. We made that better for small businesses to be able to use it more appropriately. We've put in place financing and programs for the forestry sector. And importantly, for the oil and gas sector in Alberta, we put in place funding for a Clean Resource Innovation Network, allowing that sector to think about how they can actually make advances and get more of our clean resources successfully out over the course of the coming years.
On that, why wasn't there more in the budget for natural resources, particularly in Alberta? I know you've bought Trans Mountain, and we always bring that up and talk about it, but there was a lot of disappointment out west. They say, look, there's been all these efforts made for SNC-Lavalin and nothing in the budget for Alberta.
Well, I think that's again incorrect, because I just identified for you a really significant measure that we put in place for the sector, the Clean Resource Innovation Network, which is a real way for the sector to come together with research institutions to find a way to ensure that it remains very competitive, globally competitive in terms of clean resources. But are you concerned about the
perception of it? If that's in the budget, right? But are you concerned about the perception in Alberta?
Well, I think what's important is that we address the reality of the challenge there. And the reason we go back to talk about the Trans Mountain Pipeline is because it is so critically important for the sector. So that decision and our continuing focus on ensuring we can get it done in the right way is, we know, the most important issue for the sector. We know that 99% of our resources in the oil sector in particular go to the US. We know we need to get to international markets. We know that that allows us to be part of a globe that can be more effective from a carbon standpoint, because we can displace coal in places like China. So getting resources to market is critical. It's why the Trans Mountain Pipeline, in our estimation, is so critical.
We don't have much time left, but I want to ask you as well about SNC-Lavalin, because your name has come up over and over again in this controversy. The CEO of SNC-Lavalin has come out and said he never told the government that 9,000 jobs would be lost if they did not receive a deferred prosecution agreement. What did SNC-Lavalin tell you?
You know, I'm always talking with businesses across the country about how we can have a robust and effective business sector. The specific discussions with SNC-Lavalin would have been along the lines of how can we make sure that we continue to have an effective economy. What I know in this particular situation is that I was concerned, as I would be concerned for any business in this country, that we have an opportunity for us to continue being successful.
But did you have any independent evidence that 9,000 jobs would be lost? Was there any kind of research done by your department that showed that?
The issue really, I think, that you're getting at is that what we always want to do is make sure that as we consider any decision we're making in government, we need to think about the potential impacts of those decisions. So for me, what I'm always going to do with my colleagues, what I'm going to do with the broader caucus, what I'm going to do with Canadians, is talk about the importance of great jobs.
But did you have any hard evidence that suggested the company was going to move and those 9,000 jobs would be lost?
Well, of course, what you have whenever there's a business that is in jeopardy of, being not able to continue operating, you have a situation where jobs will be at risk. That's just by definition the reality. And so that's just something that I should always be bringing forward to Canadians.
But there was no actual assessment or evidence of that.
There's obviously the case that in any situation where a business represents itself to having challenges, that they're going to be impacted. It's important for me to make sure that people understand that.
When it comes to Jody Wilson-Raybould, you both agree, you met in the House of Commons, you had a discussion, she told you that she wanted you to back off on the SNC-Lavalin file. Did she tell you at that point that her decision was final?
Let me just bring you back to that. I never did have a meeting with Jody Wilson-Raybould on this issue. She walked up to me at one stage in the House of Commons and informed me that our political staff were talking. That's, in my estimation, what they should be doing. So I'm going to always be working with my colleagues to make sure they understand the economic impacts of things.
But did she tell you her decision was final?
No.
Okay, so you thought there was still the opportunity to convince her?
I wasn't engaged in any convincing. My job is to make sure that people understand the economic consequences of their decisions. And so, you know, I'll always continue to do that.
Okay, Minister, we're out of time, but thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.